I didn't like get to sit bottomward before he bankrupted off. The bistro was crowded, bendable applesauce arena from the aerial speakers. The aroma of espresso and big-ticket desserts, blind in the air. I had about taken to accomplish a joint. The table aback, Jason looked up from his bright cappuccino and said, "We allegation to talk." My abdomen dropped. I bethink the way his articulation sounded, flat, about rehearsed. I sat anyway, my award already damp. "What's activity on?" I asked, banishment a smile. "Is this about the caterer?" He did an acknowledgement that instead he accomplished into his covering, abridged, and placed a baby clover box on the table. Not to accord it to me, but to booty article back. "I can't accessory you, Emily," he said. Aloof like that, 7 words that carved through me bluff than any scalpel I had any time held. What I whispered, he leaned back in his armchair as if the weight of bluntness had assuredly set him free. "It's not you, it's aloof. We're branch in altered directions. I've fabricated connections, important ones. Megan Langley and I were incumbent in means I didn't see before. Megan Langley, babe of Gregory Langley, the adventure backer who about endemic bisected the West Coast's tech startups. My affection began to race. Your abrogation, me, for her. It's not like that," he said, admitting it acutely was this is bigger for both of us. You deserve edition simpler. He didn't alike avoid back. I stared at him, abashed and silent. Aggravating to accept how the man I was declared to accessory in 16 canicule could abolish me so cleanly. Then, as if he hadn't gutted me enough, he added, "Also, the ring. It's a ancestor's heirloom. My grandmother would be devastated if it larbored the family." I slipped it off. My isili were shaking, but I did it. I placed it a claim on the table amid us and said, "Thank you for your honesty." Afresh, I stood up and absolved away. Beeline accomplished the bottle doors, accomplished the brace administration desserts, accomplished the analytical eyes, aggravating to amount out what aloof happened. Abandon aback, I angry the bend assimilate. Elm Street did the tears assuredly come. I didn't go aback to the accommodation we shared. I didn't appetite to see the half-packed boxes or the dress blind in the closet. I couldn't face the silence. But aback, I arrived. It was already done. My things were in labeled accoutrements by the door. Clothing, books, toiletries, all anxiously sorted, as if I were actuality, alternate to sender. Not by Jason. He wouldn't. Except Ben, that considerate. It had to be his mother. I sat on the attic beside those accoutrements for I don't apperceive how long. My old flat charter had ended. I'd accustomed it to a nursing apprentice a few weeks ago. Every cent I had adored had gone to the wedding. I had below than $100 in my annual and a abounding anniversary until payday. That's aback I did the affair I hadn't done in over a year. I alleged my advance mom, Margaret Temple, answered on the 3rd ring, her articulation balmy and abiding like it consistently was. "Emily, honey, breath except you been. I was about to alarm you about those shoes we looked at aftermost week." I couldn't alike speak. I afraid on a sob instead. That was all it took. An hour later, I was coiled on her achromatic checkerboard couch, cradling a mug of peppermint tea, while she smoothed my beard like she acclimated to aback I was 13, and burst from yet addition, adjustment gone bad. Margaret didn't ask questions. She aloof placed a blubbery affiliate absolute over my legs and said, "Stay as affiliated as you need. You apprehend me, I've got amplitude, and you've got annihilation to prove." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there on the old pull-out bed, in her active room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of that chat with Jason. His calmness, the way he didn't alike hesitate. Had he any time absolutely admired me, or was I aloof a placeholder until addition with a aftermost name like Langley showed up? By sunrise, the anguish had blah into article heavier, article like shame. I was declared to be walking into a new life, a new chapter, ancestors of my own. Instead, I was a back breath I'd started. 28 years old, heartbroken, homeless, humiliated, at noon. I showered, dressed, and alternate to the hospital as if annihilation had happened. Nurses smiled. Some asked about the Bell's plans. I smiled back, nodded, leet, because cogent, the accuracy acquainted like it would aperture me accessible all over again. But as I afflicted into my scrubs and arrested my accommodating assignments, I knew article for sure. I couldn't break actuality, forever, not in this town, not with these memories, not with Jay's memories, not while Jason Miller and Megan Langley, broiled albino to their ablaze accumbent, abutting aloof beyond the accompaniment line. Not aback, I had boilerplate abroad to go in annihilation larboard, to lose 3 canicule past, 3 slow, aching canicule breaths. I went through the motions on the hospital attic while aggravating to accumulate my abdomen from unraveling. I smiled aback. Bodies asked about the wedding. I said it had been postponed. I said Jason had a business cruise appear up. I said I was fine. I said too much. But on the 3rd day, while I was blockage and for band and allowance 8, Rachel, our blunt non-nonsense allegation nurse, peeked her arch in and said, "You still attractive. For a phenomenon escaped from this place. I blinked. What? She motioned me out into the alleyway and bargained her voice. You bethink Lily from Neuro. She took a clandestine affliction job ages ago, chambermaid aerial pay. But she abdicate after most week. Couldn't handle the guy. What guy? Rachel, aloft an eyebrow, some affluent tech mogul, paralyzed, lives up in Cypress Hill in one of those who alike builds these affectionate of houses. Apparently he's a nightmare. Sounds amazing. Pays amateur. What we accomplish here, Levine suite meals included. No roommates, no night shifts, aloof one patient. I hesitated. I'm not a caregiver. You're an assistant with 5 years of experience. She attacked back. You're added able than bisected the bodies they've had. And assurance me, this guy scares best of them off in below 2 weeks. You're stubborn. That ability absolutely assignment in your favor. I about laughed. I wasn't abiding what allotment of me still counted as stubborn. Aggregate central, me acquainted. Cracked, but article in her voice. The chat escaped, it echoed loudly. Do you accept a contact? I asked. 10 account later, she handed me a baby agenda with the name, accounting in sharp, affected cursive, Margaret Temple, acreage manager, and below it, a number. It took me until midnight to call. I stood in the back alleyway of Margaret's abode in my coat, animation in algid, Montana air, buzz afraid in my hand. Margaret Temple, best up on the additional ring. Yes, this is Emily Carter. I was told there's a position for a chambermaid nurse. A pause. Then, are you accessible for an account? Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I blinked. Yes, I can be there. Bring your accreditation and references. The abode will be texted shortly. Do not be late. The band went dead. At 4:30 a.m., I boarded the ancient flight out of Helena to San Francisco, abutting to a bounded shuttle that climbed the hills of Cyprus until it larboard the absolute apple behind. Aggregate, acquainted like a dream I hadn't earned. And afresh, I saw the house. It looked like avant-garde fortress, glass, steel, and aciculate edges alloyed into the cliffside, as if addition had carved a abode out of sunlight and stone. Affiliated a Tremenis Abuedo swung accessible as my cab approached, and for a additional I capital to acquaint the disciplinarian to about face around. Too late. Margaret Temple met me at the advanced door, a woman in her 60s, attenuate as wire, beard pulled into a bound twist, aphotic dejected clothing afterwards a wrinkle. She looked me up and bottomward with the attention of addition, who had formed in either the aggressive or hospital. You're early, she said. I didn't appetite to be late. Good. Chase me. The account was swift. She glanced over my resume, asked 4 questions, didn't smile once, and assuredly said, the position is yours, Miss Carter. The agreement are simple. Round the alarm availability, to canicule off per month. No visitors. Medical ability is crucial. Discretion is non-negotiable. Your accommodating is a complicated man. You will be active on the additional attic adjoining to his suite. Meals and abode are included. Salary, $12,000 per age's additional achievement benefit depending on the altitude progression. I approve not to react. I still bethink, arresting, the accoutrements of the armchair to accumulate from bedlam out loud. It was added then amateur what I fabricated at the hospital. I didn't accept a plan. I didn't accept annihilation, but an overstead attaché bag and a bleeding heart. But I said, yes. I said it afterwards, hesitating. Margaret slid a binder beyond the table. This is your contract. Analysis, it afford tomorrow. Your accommodating is Mr. Ryan Hale. The name meant annihilation to me then. It would anon beggarly everything. Morning, I stood al fresco, his door, binder in hand, affection thudding. The alleyway was quiet, hushed by the affectionate of carpeting that swallowed footsteps. Aggregate about this abode was able and cold. Bean floors, glassy lines, big ticket silence. Margaret stood beside me, clipboard apprenticed to her chest. You're abiding you appetite, this she asked afterwards attractive at me. I acted the contract. As not what I asked. I swallowed. Yes, she agaped twice, afresh opened the aperture afterwards catan mouse for a response. The allowance was large, too large. Vaulted ceilings, bottle walls, attractive out over a amplitude of redwood trees, sunlight bleeding beyond, anemic Bach floors. It acquainted below like a bedchamber and added like a arch allowance congenital for a ghost. He was by the window in a glassy atreminous wheelchair, back to us. Mr. Hale, Margaret said crisply. Your new assistant has arrived. Emily Carter. He didn't about face appropriate away. Aloof sat there, fingers bore the armrest. Afresh finally, he pivoted, and my animation caught. I don't apperceive what I expected. An earlier man, maybe addition frail. But Ryan Hale was young, maybe mid-30s alpine alike, while seated, short, aphotic hair, aciculate jawline, eyes like cut glass. And yet there was article beat about him. His bark was pale, his anatomy lean, but his expression, his announcement, was the affair that warned me. He looked at me like I was already a trementism, so he said, articulation low and biting. Thick. Beatific me edition 1. I opened my aperture to speak, But he cut me off. What's the bet this time, Margaret? A week, 10 days. Margaret didn't answer. She abandoned, said, I'll leave you two to get acquainted, and left, shutting the aperture. A BAFTA, black outstretched. I'm not actuality to abode bets, I said finally, just to do my job. He formed his armchair a few anxiety, closer, analytical me, like I was a allotment of art he didn't decidedly like. And what job do you anticipate that is? Medication, concrete therapy, ecology, vitals, acknowledging rehabilitation. He snorted. You forgot the allotment breath. You nod affably while I bootless to airing again. That's usually everyone's admired part. I didn't flinch. I'm not actuality to benevolence. He Aegeus arched slightly. Oh, that's new. Best of them able by day 3. Maybe I'll abruptness you. Maybe, he said, admitting the beam that coiled at the bend of his aperture fabricated it bright. He didn't accept a word. We went through the day in annealed silence. I administered medication, advised his concrete analysis plan, took notes. Ryan kept authoritative affront comments, testing me, pushing, but I didn't bite. I'd formed with veterans who absent limbs, teenagers who screamed through every injection, mothers who wept through morphine highs. Ryan Hale was not activity to alarm me. That evening, as I able his allowance for the night, he said suddenly, You're not what I expected. I looked up from the drawer. No, you haven't asked about the accident. I implore you to acquaint me if you capital too. Addition pause. Addition. Surprise, it was a ski trip, he said finally. Solo, I absent descendancy on a ridge. Woke up in a helicopter, haven't stood unaided since. I nodded. Thank you for cogent me. He stared at me for an affiliated time. Why you booty this job? I bear it, not the money. Why this job? I met his eyes. Because I've been Aria too. Because I apperceive what it's like to be befuddled away. His announcement afflicted aloof for a second, like a Abel in a coffer that shouldn't be there. Afresh, he angry back to the window. Don't get attached, he said. I don't do acknowledgement and I don't do friendship. Good, I replied. I don't do illusions. He didn't say annihilation afterwards but he didn't abolish me either. It happened on the 5th night. I wasn't declared to be awake, but the wind al fresco had been ball aback midnight. I afraid the windows like some active apparition couldn't adjudge whether to appear in or break out. I got up to abutting the blinds and spotted the ablaze still on in the West Wing gym. And Brett Ryan rarely accustomed anyone into alone. At first, I abandoned it. I told myself he apparently felt comatose watching TV in there. But article tugged at me, article, quiet and instinctive. I slipped on my sweater, bedlam bottomward, the bashful hall, and pushed the gym aperture, accessible aloof, abundant, to blink through. And what I saw, chock-full, everything. Ryan Hale was standing, not completely, not unaided. He was arresting a brace of alongside bars, his accoutrements closed with strain. Diaphoresis, decrepit bottomward his temple, his legs trembled below him, every beef taut, but he was accomplishing it slowly, determinately, footfall by assiduous step. My animation caught. He didn't apprehension me at first. He was too focused. But the bendable brook of the aperture gave me away. He turned, saw me, and his announcement confused instantly from accomplishment to rage. What the hell are you doing? He snapped. I heard something. I thought, get out, Ryan. Now, I didn't move. I couldn't. Not because I was frozen, but because article in my chest had already changed. He wasn't hopeless. He wasn't finished. He was ambuscade progress. Why? Why are you befitting this a secret? I asked softly, his Isley clenched tighter about the bars. Duke White. Because the minute bodies see progress, they apprehend miracles. That's not how healing works. He laughed bitterly. No, but it's how disappointment works. I've already watched Bodhi's airing abroad already. They accomplished I wasn't activity to. Magically acceleration out of the armchair and be who I was again. I'm not accomplishing that again. So instead, you pretend there's annihilation left. That you've accustomed up. His jaw tightened. You don't get it. I stepped after peace anxiously, like a blood-soaked animal. Maybe I do. His eyes bound. Assimilate mine, furious, uncertain. I am not activity to acquaint anyone, I said. But if you let me advise you, absolutely advise you, we can assignment a joint article better. You don't accept to do this alone. Why? He demanded. Why do you care? Because I apperceive what it's like to accept your abutting, ripped abroad, and be accepted to smile through the pieces. He stared at me, animation hard, diaphoresis aflame on his skin. I anticipation he'd bawl again, adjustment me out, threatened to blaze me. Instead, he bargained himself boring back into the chair, silent, exhausted. Finally, he muttered, fine. My affection jumped. We accumulate this amid us, he added. No one knows, I understand. And you chase my lead. I say stop. We stop, I say go. You help. That's it. Agreed? He advised me, eyes still sharp, but article had shifted. Article unspoken. You're not like the others. I shrugged. I'm not aggravating to be. We started the sessions, the abutting. Morning, early, quiet, afore Margaret afflicted afore the sunlight absolutely broiled the kitchen tiles. Anniversary footfall he took was agony. Controlled, measured, like angry force with annihilation but animosity and beef memory. But he did it, and I was there. Not to cheer, not to weep, aloof to support. One Duke acceptance, the world. He didn't. Appetite to abatement in. It started with a voice. I was acclamation the meds chiffonier and my allowance aback. I heard it. Deep, confident, too smooth. Male, not Ryan, not a abode agent's member. Curious, I confused agilely adjoined the Capitol alleyway and followed the complete into the west sitting room. There, lounging on the covering couch, was a man in his aboriginal 40s. Big ticket watch, bright in the morning sun. Captivation, a bottle of article that wasn't juice. Ryan, you attending like hell. The man laughed. Ryan, beyond from him, offered a bound smile. Good to see you, too, Eric. That was my addition to Eric Thorne, Ryan's longtime business partner. The man who, according to Margaret, had stepped up to administer Hale Nexus Technologies afterwards Ryan's accident. Article about him fabricated. My bark crawl. Maybe it was the way he looked at Ryan like he was still barometer his worth. Or maybe it was how his eyes landed on me aback. I absolved in with the tea tray. Apathetic, assessing, invasive. This the new one? He asked. Emily Carter. I said evenly. Ambience. Bottomward the tray. She any bigger than the aftermost three? Eric quipped, sipping his drink. She's not actuality to blot you. Ryan replied coldly. She's my nurse. The chat angry to business. Mergers, broker tensions. Government contracts. I approved to break invisible, but one chat froze me breath. I stood, Langley. Eric leaned in, blurred his voice. Laura says her father's accessible to advance the funds through. We aloof allegation the ascendancy amalgamation transferred to the shell. Langley Capital will blot it. He's got contacts in the tech board. Easy in. Ryan didn't respond. He stared out the window. Duke bound to join the armrest. I've already abled the docs. Eric continued. We aloof allegation your signature later. Ryan, said Al attending them over. You've been adaged that for weeks. If we delay abundant longer, the befalling closes. Ryan didn't answer. My beating thundered in my ears. I slipped out of the allowance before either of them noticed I was still continuing there. Langley, Laura Langley. That name still apparitional me. And afresh, it clicked. Langley Capital. Laura Eric's advance for Ryan's signature. The company they were aggravating to booty. It banned ascendancy while Ryan was still recovering. And if Laura was involved, Megan, Langley couldn't be far behind. My chest anchored as I alternate to my allowance and shut the door. Was this affiliated to what happened to me? Was I aloof, a eyewitness spent in the battery of article bigger? Or had they alleged me for this, for actuality, the babe, no one would suspect. That night, I couldn't accumulate it in SI helped Ryan. With his addition exercises, I bankrupt the silence. There's Article 1 overheard today about your company. He didn't attending at me. Go on, I told him aggregate, verbatim. Names, phrases, tone. I alike mentioned Megan Langley. At that, he paused. You apperceive her. My ex-fiancé larboard me for her. He blinked slowly. Jason Miller. I nodded. You apperceive him? No, but I've heard the name through Eric. He formed abroad from the coffer and stared at me. Are you suggesting that my business accomplice and your ex are what and on article together? I'm suggesting it's too abundant of a coincidence. He didn't say annihilation for an affiliated moment. Afresh finally, I'll analysis the documents. That was it. I approved not to feel crushed. I'd hoped for more, maybe belief, maybe action. But instead, Ryan alternate to blackout like aggregate, I said, had gone beeline into a void. That night, I paced my allowance like a cage thing. Was I wrong? Was I apperception shadows? Or worse, was I appropriate and no one would accept me? The abutting morning, he agape on my door. He never knocked. Aback I opened it. Ryan sat in his wheelchair, a binder in his lap. You were right, he said. Langley Capital isn't aloof, investing. The paperwork transfers controlling rights and buying to a captivation aggregation Eric formed 2 months ago hidden. Below layers, my animation caught. I appetite you to advise me stop them. He handed me the folder. Are you sure? I asked. Afterwards, everything. Ryan nodded. If they anticipate I'm too anemic to fight. Afresh they abandoned who I was afore. Broke. The plan took canicule to finalize. Every night afterwards the agents had gone quiet and the windows had gone dark. Ryan and I sat beyond from anniversary added at the affiliated oak table in the study. Cloudburst over abstracts and action notes. His easily trembled from burnout, sometimes, but his articulation backward steady. He was architecture a war allowance allotment by allotment, and I was his abandoned accessory, central the walls. He'd already contacted his attorney. They were acquisition records, emails, contracts, coffer trails. Ryan had hidden annihilation from me, not alike his doubts. I trusted Eric added than anyone, he said one night. He was there the day I pitched my Aboriginal app. I let him allege on my account a back I couldn't walk. And all this time you were appropriate to assurance your gut. I told him I was backward to do it. He replied, but I won't be backward again. One anniversary later, a appropriate affair of the lath was called no undoubtable anything. Ryan let Eric anticipate the signature was coming. He alike thanked him in an email for administration things so well. That aforementioned afternoon, he ill-fitted up. It was the Aboriginal time I saw him in a bounding, tailored suit, midnight blue, crisp, handsome in a way that fabricated my affection slow. His anatomy was still weak, but article about the way he moved. Proud, upright, fabricated the air and the allowance shift. He accomplished walking to the appointment table with a cane. Aloof, 10 steps, a fresh 15, a fresh 20. I appetite them to see it, he said with their own eyes. The day of the meeting, we accustomed 15 account early. The architecture was all bottle and chrome and to abundant silence. Heads angry as we entered. Ryan walking beside me, jaw set, accomplished abstinent but firm. Shock bouncing through the halls like an electric accepted in the boardroom. Eric sat at the arch of the table. Laura was there too, in an affable gray suit, legs crossed, aperture corrective like war. And beside her, Jason. He looked debate then, I remembered, still handsome, still smug, but below able now. Like article adopted that hadn't been alternate, absolutely right. Aback Ryan stepped into the room, pike staff in hand. The blackout snapped. You're walking, Eric said. Not perfectly, Ryan replied, but enough. He didn't sit at the far end. He absolved anon to the arch of the table, paused, and looked Eric comatose in the eyes. This affair is now below my authority, he said calmly, and I'll activate with this. He placed a binder on the table and addled it open. The allowance, watched as he laid out every coin trail, every backdoor clause, every affidavit of Eric's attack to Duke ascendancy, of Hale Nexus Technologies to a clandestine carapace aggregation endemic by Langley Capital. Laura didn't flinch. Jason, confused. Uncomfortably, Eric's face, boring, drained of color. You can't prove intent, Eric muttered. I don't accept. 2, Ryan replied. I had banned it except to prove aperture of fiduciary duty, which I aloof did. The lath stirred. The accepted admonition stood. Mr. Hale, would you like to appeal an actual vote of no confidence? I would, Ryan said, able immediately. Chaos erupted. Laura rose first, her heels beat like gunshots. You don't apperceive who you're messing with, Ryan. Oh, I do, he said softly. A woman who hides abaft her father's name and a man who sells out aggregate for a shortcut. She scoffed. And your nurse? What? She's your co-founder now. Ryan angry. To attending at me, she's the acumen. I'm continuing, actuality at all. Jason looked away. The lath voted. It was unanimous. Eric was removed. The affairs nullified. Ascendancy reverted. Aback it was done, and the allowance austere out. Ryan and I backward abaft alone. He leaned on his cane, animation hard, but his eyes shone. You did it, I whispered. No, he said. We did. And then, aloof for a second, he smiled advanced. And abounding and real. And I accomplished article I hadn't let myself accept until that moment. He wasn't the abandoned one who'd taken his Aboriginal accomplished that day. Weeks passed. The abode no best acquainted like a mothlim the windows were accessible at it often. A blaze caked into the halls, and alike the garden, already dry and overgrown, breathed again. Ryan still had adamantine days, still limped, still had to brace a joint pain. But the acerbity that acclimated to Isle abaft every footfall had started to lift, so had mine, the bells I never had. I chocked full, aching it. The name I about took, I let it go. Slowly, I began seeing myself as added than aloof addition who'd been discarded. I started a count again. Active abbreviate lapse on the clandestine Isle abaft, the house laughing. Bedlam, afterwards guilt. Ryan fabricated it a point to Baker one night a week, alike admitting he austere rice and accursed at the stovelight. It owed him something. I let him. I sat at the kitchen island, legs coiled up, animated at his frustration. That was our ritual, baby unspoken, but ours. One night he handed me a bowl I couldn't analyze and said, if this kills you, I appetite it on record. I tried, you'll get the aggregation in the will. I deadpanned. He paused. Actually no, I looked up. I transferred it to a trust, he said, one that includes you. I blinked. What? I'm not giving you the company, he said gently. But, I appetite you to apperceive I congenital article bigger with you than I anytime did with anyone else. And I appetite you to be allotment of what's next. I stared at him. Ryan, he accomplished into his abridged and pulled out a baby box. Before you say anything, he said quickly, you don't accept to acknowledgement today or alike this year. I apperceive I'm still acquirements, how to be a being again, and I apperceive you didn't assurance up for this. He opened the box. Central was a ring. Simple gold, one tiny azure in the middle. But I'd like to ask anyway, he said, articulation, low. will you exceed walking this alley with me? Not because I allegation saving, but because with you I bethink who I am. I didn't cry. I anticipation I might, but instead I acquainted article else. Article steady, a faculty of arrival. Like I'd absolved through the darkest allotment of the backwoods and begin not a castle, but a clearing, a quiet abode to breathe again. I took the ring, slid it, assimilate my finger. I'm not adage yes, I whispered, smiling, but I'm not adage, no, he laughed. That sounds absolutely like you. We didn't rush. There were no admirable announcements, no headlines, aloof added mornings, added progress. He absolved bisected a mile, on his own. The afterward month, I anesthetized my acceptance to accessible my own clandestine practice. We assassin, added staff. I backward in the house, but it no best acquainted like his, it acquainted like ours. As for Jason, he texted once, 2 lines, allurement, if I was okay. I never replied. I did an allegation too because the accuracy was, I'd already gotten aggregate I was declared to get from that heartbreak. A lesson, a detour, and an aperture into the activity I hadn't alike dared to imagine. And Ryan, he chock-full application, the armchair altogether by the fall. On his birthday, we took a abbreviate cruise up to the coast. Aloofus, he absolved, beside me bottomward the bank at sunset. Beach, adhering to our feet, the wind algid, abundant to sting. At one point, he looked out over the ocean and said, you anticipate we'll any time go back to who we were afore at all. I befuddled my head, I achievement not. He angry to me and I added, because who we became is better. He didn't respond. He aloofed accomplished for my duke and didn't let go.